I love wasting money. Sometimes when I go down to the clubs in Nashville, I take my money and I just make it rain. Other times I like to take my money, crumple it up into little bits, throw it around, just for fun. But what really gets me going, what really just gets me jacked up, is when I can waste money and lay waste to the environment. Wait a minute. That's not true for all of you? Because you deserve to know this is happening every time you idle in a fast food drive-thru and pick up a meal. Now, I know this because I've done extensive research on this topic. In high school, I sat in my local Steak and Shake parking lot, and I calculated the amount of time vehicles spent idling in the fast food drive-thru there. I calculated the amount of CO2 emissions that they produced while idling. And while I probably ate too many hamburgers in the process of doing this, I found that we're currently having a drastic negative environmental impact just waiting in line to get a hamburger. We're literally producing tons of CO2 a day that's contributing to global warming and harming our planet. However, I also found that 60% of the fast food industry's profits come through that drive-thru window. You see, we can't keep the drive-thru as is because it's killing our environment. Yet we can't get rid of it either because doing so would kill the fast food industry. So what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this problem? Well, my friends, this is where you guys all come into play as Nashville citizens. We need to encourage the Nashville City Council to revamp Nashville's drive-thrus to act as a downward ramp, allowing us to turn off our cars, coast downhill to pick up that fast food meal without producing CO2. Now, before we totally slide into this issue, I want to tell you how we're going to structure our time here. The first thing we're going to do is do exactly what you do when you pull up to the drive-thru window. We're going to pull up to that first drive-thru window, the money window, and we're going to talk about economics. Then, we're going to pull up to that second drive-thru window, the food window, where things are produced. We're going to talk about the impact of producing CO2 on our environment. But before we do this, I need to give you a little bit more background information on exactly what my policy is and how my policy will work. A downward sloping drive-thru is exactly what it sounds like, a drive-thru that's cut into the ground and slopes downhill. More specifically, we need to change Nashville metro zoning to require all new fast food restaurants or restaurants that do more than $2,000 of renovations to create a downward sloping drive-thru of a 1-degree grade. Such a 1-degree grade would be a very gradual sloping drive-thru. Wouldn't have to make any changes to the existing building, just changes to the concrete outside. And while the cost of this policy change would be incurred by the restaurant, as you will soon see, the benefits for all parties involved greatly outweigh these costs. So let's begin. Let's pull up to that first drive-thru window and let's talk some economics. You may not realize this, but Nashville citizens are currently seeing a negative economic impact from idling in drive-thrus every time they idle in them. Hopefully by now you realize that we produce CO2 while we're idling. But you may not realize how much gasoline we also burn while idling. According to Vanderbilt's own Amanda Carrico, we burn 0.57 gallons of gasoline an hour while idling. Combining this statistic with statistics from McDonald's 2011 annual report and the average amount of time individuals spend idling in a McDonald's drive-thru, according to research by Quick Service Restaurant Magazine, we find that Nashville citizens are currently wasting $3,234 a year in gas money idling in a McDonald's drive-thru. $3,234 wasted sitting in line to get a hamburger. Now some of you are probably thinking, yeah, that'd be great to make that savings, but what's the cost of making this policy change, right? Surely there's got to be some sort of cost. Well, as in all things, there is a cost, but as you will soon see, the cost is very negligible when we see the positive economic impacts and environmental impacts this policy change can have. Using research from the Victoria Transport Policy Institute, which calculated the average cost per square foot of creating all different types of parking lots and drive-thrus, including a McDonald's parking lot, we find that my policy would cost restaurants $1,050 per restaurant to make this downward sloping drive-thru change. Now say over the course of 10 years, all the McDonald's restaurants in the city of Nashville, that's 25 McDonald's restaurants, make this change. That'd be a cost of roughly $26,000 over all the restaurants over the course of 10 years. However, in that same time period, Nashville citizens would save over $32,000 in gas money. That's a net savings of $6,000 that can be spent more directly into the Nashville economy instead of being spent on foreign oil. Also, of that $26,000 in costs in Nashville restaurants, a large portion of it would still be helping Nashville's economy because you have to hire Nashville construction workers to revamp Nashville's drive-thrus. Now, for those of you who are still thinking, you're still hesitating on this, you're thinking, yeah, that seems like too much effort for too little gain. We're putting too much burden on the restaurants here. Let me show you what happens when a McDonald's restaurant becomes more environmentally efficient. In 2010, McDonald's restaurant in Riverside, California was undergoing renovations. And the restaurant owners knew McDonald's restaurants don't have the most environmentally friendly reputation. So they decided to change that. They made their restaurant more environmentally efficient. They installed environmentally efficient lights, building materials, plumbing, water, you name it. And they let the general public know about it. They won the LEED Gold certification for being the most environmentally friendly restaurant of its type. But that wasn't all the restaurant won. According to the New York Times, this restaurant did 20% more business after making these green renovations. Now, with the average McDonald's bringing in $2.6 million per year, that's an extra $520,000 they're bringing in because of these green renovations. Find me a McDonald's restaurant in this city that doesn't want an extra $520,000. I guarantee you, you will not be able to find one. So now that we've seen the negative economic impact these drive-thrus are having and the positive change we can make by changing them, let's pull up to that second drive-thru window and let's talk about the environmental impact of this change. We're currently producing CO2 when idling. I hope we understand that now. That's CO2 that's contributing to global warming and harming our planet. According to Vanderbilt's own Michael Vanderbilt, we produce 1.4 grams of CO2 per second while idling. That's idling that, according to NASA, is contributing to the melting of the Arctic ice shelf to its lowest point that it's ever been. Think about all the McDonald's restaurants, all the fast food restaurants all over the world with drive-thrus that people are idling in every day, producing CO2. In fact, at just McDonald's restaurants in 1 year alone, people produce over 621,000 metric tons of CO2. That's just idling in the drive-thru lane. That's in 1 year. That's twice the amount of CO2 Vanderbilt's own coal power plant produces in 2 years. Let me remind you that rising CO2 levels and falling Arctic ice levels together contribute to a global rise in sea levels, and that according to the UN panel on climate change, at our current CO2 production rate, we can expect at least a 2-meter rise in sea levels. A 2-meter rise in sea levels means the city of New Orleans is completely underwater by the year 2090. That's 350,000 people whose city and livelihood is gone, according to the US Census. So either we do simple things to reduce our CO2 emissions, like revamping our drive-thrus, or the city of New Orleans needs to get really good at holding its breath. Now, I've reached the end of my time with you here today, but I hope you realize the negative economic impact and the negative environmental impact that drive-thrus are having. I hope you understand why we can't keep the drive-thru as is, but we can't get rid of it either. That's why we need to revamp Nashville's drive-thrus to act as a downward ramp so we can coast downhill and get that Big Mac without killing our planet. Lastly, my friends, don't be the obnoxious person I demonstrated to you earlier, who wastes money for fun and lays waste to the environment. Be the responsible people I know you are, and encourage the Nashville City Council to slide through this new policy on the drive-thru. Thank you.